So when we talk about the Constitution, it's always important to pause when we're talking about the Constitutional Convention and try to maybe put it in the framework of how it can be debated in the modern era and how there can be debates about what the Constitution means in the modern world. So one of those examples could be a debate over government surveillance. You know, can the government track cell phone data and location data? Can they wiretap telephones? Can they, monitor internet searches? These are questions that perhaps the founders wouldn't have envisioned because they weren't aware of those technologies, and yet they're at the core of what does our Constitution mean today, and what do our protections mean today when we talk about the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, which we'll talk about in our Unit on Civil Liberties. Similarly, we can apply it to a debate about the role of the federal government in education. You know, it's another example in which the founders maybe didn't envision a strong centralized government having a say in what maybe some people thought really wasn't a role of the government at all. And yet now it is deeply embedded in our discussion about what government can and should be doing. And how does the Constitution apply here? You know, some people think the Department of Education is very important. Other people think maybe it shouldn't even exist at the federal level and should only be at the state and local level. So all of this is to say that even though there are many core principles embedded in the Constitution that the founders put in there, we don't necessarily know how they apply in the modern era because it was a different world back then. But speaking of those core principles, we should turn our attention to one of the documents we've read, which is Federalist 51, in which James Madison talks about some of these core principles. Specifically, he talks about the idea of separation of powers and checks and balances. He says, in essence, ambition must be made to counteract ambition, and that men are not angels. And so if we can separate out power, it will prevent tyranny. And so we have three branches, legislative, executive, judicial. They have separate spheres. And that's something you really need to go back and take a look at. What are the powers of each of the three branches? What are the things that they can each do? At the same time, the core concept of checks and balances goes right alongside that, which is each branch has the ability to limit some of what the other branches can do to try to keep them in check or rein them in. This is a core concept in our Constitution as well. And so as we go through different provisions of the Constitution, we always need to keep in mind that all of the different branches of government are intertwined, interwoven, and interacting together in a way that's supposed to limit their authority and to maintain the protection of the people.